What is up, Sixers Nation? This is Six of the Universe 122, 110. We whooped that Celtic butt, and there is a lot to digress and talk about. Let's lead off with the most big thing Ben Simmons in his fourth quarter. And when I think about Ben in his fourth quarter, and I think about the role that he has played on his team, the situation, everything that happened, I think the big picture of thinking about Ben Simmons and what he's been doing, go look over at the Brooklyn Nets. They doom themselves to mediocrity. If you get swept by the Cleveland Cavaliers, and yes, Kevin Durant is out, but you still gave up 125. This team is not even going to win that many regular season. I'm serious. They don't have anyone on the perimeter. They don't have a single, even halfway decent rotational perimeter defender. And their talent overlaps. So yeah, there'll be great ISO scoring, but this is no big three. This is more closer to the 2000, what was it, 2005 New York Knicks, Zach Randolph, Eddie Curry. You only won 33 games. Now I'm not suggesting that the Brooklyn Nets missed the playoffs. I will suggest, however, that they're going to be a lot lower than number one and number two. Because put it this way, both Philadelphia and Boston would probably burn out the Nets as well. I'm just saying. Right now, the Nets, because of what they did to themselves, they're a tier or two below the top three, four Eastern teams. And there's nothing they can do to fix it because they just traded 8 picks. So I'm just saying, and the reason why I think about what the Brooklyn Nets did to themselves relating to to Ben Simmons. We will get to the best big man in the world in a second. I'm just, excited. But the reason I brought up the Nets in relation to Ben Simmons is this, and I'm guilty of it too. $29 million. You would like to hope that it's the best player in the world or among the best players in the world. And you know what? That may never be the case. And I'm saying that, and I'm fine with that. It's a similar feeling to what one of my best friends, this whole Philadelphia YouTube community has been best friend. RB, Philly Mike, even Philly 500 in football, now football guru and stuff, but I watch their videos and I like it. This whole Philadelphia sports community on YouTube has just been something else. So shout out to everybody there. But it's DJ and I had the same feeling early in the season that, you're winning, you're fine. And that's really what it comes down to. If Ben is going to be perfect role player, I'll make passes here, I'll get some boards here, and I'll make field goals here and there. Basically, walking point center DeAndre Jordan. As long as we win, who am I to say that that's not worth $29 million? He will never be in the MVP race. He will never likely be, getting any awards. He's heading down. If this is the path that he's chosen for himself and he's comfortable with it, it's more Bobby Jones than Julius Erving. And I didn't watch those teams, but I know roughly, statistically, go basketball reference. But if that's the role that Ben Simmons has chosen for himself, and if he excels at this role and he's okay with this role, Toby goes off, Seth Curry goes off, Tobias Harris, he'll have his own segment in this recap. If all these other guys are going to chip in and produce offensively, and Ben Simmons can be that third or fourth guy with minimum turnovers. That's the thing, with minimum turnovers. And the Sixers quote unquote turnovers tonight, there has to be a lot of context. 6 of their turnovers came off of calls that never should have happened. And now that I got started, I have to talk about it. That was the worst officiated game in the history of basketball. And yeah, there were some calls for the Celtics side too, so I will acknowledge that, Boston fans. But for us, and it was neutral. But I am also a Sixer fan, so it does affect the Sixers, so it hurts a little more. But even as a neutral fan, if you were a neutral fan watching this game, there were two very egregious calls. There were a lot of them, but two of them stand out for the incompetence of tonight's crew. You heard me right, incompetence. Doc Rivers may not be able to say it. Joel Embiid got a technical for it, but quite frankly, Joel could have went off even more. I will say this to the officiating crew. That was the worst officiating game in basketball. I've watched this game for 20 years, and when you watch it for that long, there are games that make you feel that way, so to be sure there'll probably be another one. But I want to say to Adam Silver, this is ridiculous. So, okay, let's talk about those two calls. Both of them were fouls and therefore turnovers against Embiid. But I want to assure you, even the Celtic fans, when they calm down, they'll be like, those calls should not have been called. The offensive foul on the screen of Joel Embiid, that was not an offensive foul. What makes that call even more ignorant is the referee who called it was right there. You have no excuse for missing that call. It wasn't the sideline out of bounds ref. It wasn't the ref on the opposite side of the court. It was the ref directly in front of it. How do you miss that? It's a textbook screen. And let me adjust my laptop for a minute to show you guys. So, okay. When Embiid is standing like this is a textbook screen. This is how you're taught to screen. He didn't, George Burke said it in ESPN. I was watching ESPN only because that stream is better. But in that stream, George Burke was like, he's not leaning. And he wasn't. And he's not moving. And even then, let's talk about the slip screen for a second. When they set this and then they roll out or roll in. That's legal as long as you set this, stay stationary, and then move. But Embiid didn't even move. So that offensive foul, whether you thought of it as a slip screen or whether it was stationary, either way, in the rulebook, that screen was textbook. There was not a foul at all. In fact, the defender wasn't dislodged at all. That's not a foul. And you're directly in that play. That should never happen. So the same ref made a similarly ignorant call late in the fourth quarter. Joel Embiid makes some excellent rotations. Joel Embiid beats Spice to the spot. His hands are stationary. He's 5 feet in front of the restricted area. And somehow, don't tell me how, I don't know, this is called, and this is where Embiid got the technical, this is called a blocking foul. How? The rules state that when the defender is outside the restricted area, feet planted, beat them to the spot, is stationary, that is an offensive foul. And it's the same ref. Twice, you're in the vicinity. Twice, you have the obligation to make the call. And you were horrendous. You were absolutely atrocious. You should be fired by the NBA. These two calls, and there were similar iffy calls throughout the game. Shake Milton got called for an offensive foul on a similar exchange with Dwight Howard. I don't even know how that happened. But these calls were egregious. They were absolutely atrocious. And to harken back on what DJ was talking about with the Isaiah Joe foul in the Miami game, this is the best league in the world. How are you making these foul calls? I'll never get over it. And if these refs had cost us the game, I would have been talking about some more fouls. All you guys know, it was a ridiculously awfully called game to where Doc Rivers mentioned in those segments where they talk to the announcer, the broadcast crew. Doc Rivers like, oh, he was frustrated about something else. And he's like, we're fine, we're all fine. Adam Silver, you have to do something about this. Unrelated, Draymond Green gets a technical for talking to James Wiseman. Like, what? We kind of, Philly had bitten its tongue, obviously we're not at the games. But Philly Nation is going to talk to Adam Silver. These refs have been awful through this whole season. They have been ridiculously awful. It's insane. So, yeah, sorry that I went on that tangent for a moment. Let's get on something more positive. Joel Hans Embiid! Man, absolutely sensational. So, when you consider that the blocking foul that wasn't causes a turnover, and the offensive screen that wasn't causes a turnover, you should look at Joel Embiid's numbers and only credit him for 3 turnovers, not 5, 3. And for his production, 3 turnovers is more than acceptable. I thought that Joel Embiid played absolutely sensational. And one of the big things that make him sensational, and I want to get on a little tangent on it now, the mid-range jumper. Because it was made a mention. I've been watching some other broadcasts, and there was a broadcast, sorry, not even broadcast, but more of a podcast thing on YouTube. And there was a podcast with, Derek Bonner. He's a writer for The Athletic and other things like that. Well-known Philly guy. When he was on the OGM and I was on the OGM and Liberty Ballers and other things, we had basically gotten into Thesis and touch on the Iguodala era. But I mostly respect it anyway. People have different opinions. It is what it is. But when he mentions that Daryl Morey would probably prefer some of these going out to 3, I will never accept the analytically driven. The way you would have it, LaMarcus Aldridge is a non-factor. The way you would have it, Brandon Roy is not an all-star. I get it. 3 is more than 2. Second grade, right? But basketball is not golf. Basketball is not golf where if you hit a ball to a certain area, it's -1, -0, whatever, and the more positive points, the worse it is. No, basketball is not like that. If basketball was scored on a golf scorecard, you could say particular shot from particular area matters more, but that's not what really counts. What counts is the ball going in the bucket. So if you have a mid-range big like Dirk, certainly Dirk took more of those shots than 3. So is Dirk Nowitzki not a Hall of Famer? It's the value of the ball going in the bucket, not the area that it comes from, that matters. If you shoot 50% quote-unquote long 2s, by all means take them. Because to equal 50% long 2s, you'd have to be 65% from 3, and you're just not going to get that. Maybe one night, maybe 2 nights, but not in a 7-game series. The Warriors are dead. It's never going to happen like that again. So you just got to get over it. That's not the beauty of this game. The beauty of this game is I can attack the rim. I can get to the free throw line. And he did that tonight. Seriously, in the second half, I think it ended up being 16, 17 free throws. Let me check real quick. I think I got, no, I exited out the box score, but I think he had like 16, 17 free throws. If you have a mid-range game, now the double teams, of those 3 turnovers, only 2 came off of double teams. And one of them came, honestly, I thought it was a foul on one of the reaches. It hit Joel Embiid's arm, no foul call. My whole point and the counter argument is that if you would take away the mid-range game from some of the games, great. What do you have? What do you have? Don't be so obsessed with shooting beyond the 3-point line. And Joel Embiid made one. He made his only one. And the counter argument would be, oh, what if Embiid just kept shooting more? You realize his percentage is higher because he's shooting less of them to an extent, but also more selective with them? Hoisting threes for the sake of it means nothing. At that point, you're Danny Green, and let's talk about that. Danny Green is the weak link on this team. Now, 11-5, you're pretty good, you're rolling. But rolling in the regular season shows you signs. But it's also, I'm going to be like a bros here. What do you have to do to win in June? Upgrade on Danny Green. Danny Green, almost cost you the game tonight. The +6 doesn't tell you anything. What it tells you that he played with Joel Embiid. That's all that tells you. His individual performance, 2 for 7, leaves something to be desired. Shake Milton also struggled a bit, but for me, the story is Danny Green. Danny Green, 4 on 5 on screens. He still gets absolutely brutally murdered on each and every screen. And you know who also got murdered on these screens? Furkan Korkmaz. We had to have a heart-to-heart with Doc Rivers tonight. Doc, your rotations were shit tonight. Furkan Korkmaz should not be getting over 20 minutes. Danny Green should not be getting over 20 minutes. These are your least talented Sixers. And they both occupy more than 25 minutes. And you barely got 13 points out of them. Or 13 shots! That isn't mentioning that Furkan is also a liability on the defensive end of the floor. And I'm not even mentioning, oh my God, Sport Talk with Bros is going to laugh his ass off on his recap on the 2 airball layups, one of which was called a travel. And obviously, it wasn't a travel. Shouldn't have been called a travel. That's the kind of night. That's the kind of night that the refs are having. That an airball layup was called a travel. I think the first time wanted to show them that he missed the layup, and that's why he airballed the second one. The refs were just grade F garbage. One of the worst officiated games. Obviously, Celtic fans will feel the same from a different angle, but even from a neutral perspective, that was one of the worst officiated games I had ever seen, ever. Refs, please be better. We have a back-to-back with the Pistons. Can we please get a different officiating crew? That was awful. That was unacceptably awful. These refs made the calls they made in part because there wasn't a Philly crowd. If we were there, boys, if we were there, that crowd, you know they would have heard it. They would have heard it on the screen. It wasn't, and they definitely would have heard it. They would have had to get a charter plane out of here after the blocking foul. It wasn't. That wasn't even worse called than the screen. Like, bro. Oh. So I talked about Ben and his elite fourth quarter, and if Ben is the third option with low turnovers, Joel doing his thing. Steph Curry was hitting threes tonight, hit a mid-range. I actually thought that Steph Curry's handle was suffered from the layoff more than the shot. So give Steph Curry more time and more games as a ball handler to get back into the flow of it. All right, Doc's rotations. Tyrese Maxey. Now, in the early part of the year, he was getting 9, 10 minutes, etc. He was at third guard. Tonight, you played Shake 20, Seth 20, and Tyrese only gets 6. This basically means that Doc Rivers is playing him as the third point guard and playing with the pure wings, who again, you got 13 points out of 13 shots, including 2 air balls. And this isn't even mentioning, we have to talk about it. I've been saying for a while now, take Ben Simmons off the ball, put him at one of the forward spots, and go with a 2-guard lineup. For a brief moment in time, a moment in time in which we actually regained the lead, you saw Steph Curry, Tyrese Maxey, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, and Joel Embiid. And for the couple of minutes that 5 was on the court, I saw exactly what I thought I was going to see. I saw activity on the defensive end. I saw a lot of length, athleticism, and I also saw speed and ball handling. Doc, I understand the theory, the comfort theory, but if Tyrese is running off screens and you got Steph Curry as a shooter, if Tobias Harris is shooting 40% from 3, What made Al Horford unproductive is that Al Horford couldn't bring anything. Tyrese off the bounce as your primary ball handler brings a lot. The 18 turnovers, guess what? Tyrese had none. Only 6 minutes, obviously. But we've seen in larger minute sample size that Tyrese Maxey is a low turnover player. Why put yourself through the unnecessary pain of Danny Green and Furkan Korkmaz when you could have had Tyrese Maxey? Furkan and Danny, both of them combined for over 45 minutes. Tyrese only getting 6. Doc, your rotations this year have been pretty good. They've actually been really excellent. But Doc, tonight, I think this was your worst rotation game of the year. I think you really lost sight of the rotation because Seth came back. Because there's no reason, certainly no reason in terms of play, that Tyrese should go from starting him as a combo guard at 2, which I disagreed with. I was very happy to see Steph Curry in there. But really, for me, again, that 5-minute stretch, that 2-minute stretch, Seth, Tyrese, Ben, Toby, Embiid, that's your lineup for the future, Doc. It should be your lineup right now. I said that Milton and Maxey backcourt is your future. But really, Danny Green is just not a starter. He's not a starter on defense. I mean, especially defense. He is the worst. He is the reason that you're losing these screen and roll battles. He is incredibly slow. He is incredibly weak. He dies on each and every screen I've ever seen from the guy. I mean, it's over. Danny Green should retire. He's not an NBA player at this stage of his career. He's just not. But for Danny and Furkan to get those minutes while Tyrese rides the pine, Doc, I don't know about that. I disagree with that rotation tonight, Doc. I really do. I hope it's not the norm. I hope we don't have to see Furkan 25 minutes, Danny Green 25 minutes. I hope that that's not what we have to see. And if we do, if that's what you want to go with, Isaiah Joe is a better player than Furkan. I'm literally right there with Broge. It's Furkan that should be getting do not play coach's decision. He's not an NBA rotation player either. It might be a little thing, saying Tyrese and Furkan and Isaiah Joe. It might look minor, but it really means something when it comes to your bench depth, your rotations, and being able to squeeze one out like we did tonight against Boston. I just would have preferred a different rotation. One where Furkan either wasn't in it or limited minutes, same thing for Danny Green. Both of them defensively are just liabilities. Okay, I went through it long enough. Tobias Harris! This guy! I do think I have a little bit of a wheeze. Oh well, I'll take care of that after the video. Tobias Harris. This dude was something else. Man, if Tobias Harris keeps playing this way, I don't want to move him. I'm sorry. He's playing the Rashard Lewis role perfectly. He's that 3-point shot in the corner, money. Attacking off the bounce, simple, easy, not thinking about it. Mid-range jump shot, you got a couple opportunities in post to knock them down. Driving hard to the bucket. Solid defensively. I thought he made some good rotations. All in all, man, this team, I am super excited about the Sixers franchise moving forward. Ben Simmons, low turnovers, high field goal percentage, third option, we can live with that. I mean, if you want to be that and we win multiple championships, I really don't mind. After all, it's not my career. He doesn't want to be a Hall of Famer, but he wants to be a Hall of Fame teammate on the team. Okay. Okay, I can get behind that. You want to be the Bobby Jones, you want to be the Doug Collins instead of Julius Erving? Okay. Okay, I can live with that. Sure. Especially if Joel Harden Embiid, Stephen A. Let's talk about this. A big man who dominates the game puts you in a position to win an NBA championship. If you look at the history of the NBA, go back to, let's say, obviously 2000. Yeah, the Shaq VP Lakers. But even then, there were some pretty close teams. Remember, they're even in the prime at Dallas. And Chris Webber. If Chris Webber doesn't have that ACL, it was at a time where, they didn't have the medical advances they do now. If Chris Webber didn't have that ACL, boy, Chris Webber, those Kings, they may have gotten one. Webber in his prime is a damn good power forward. And then after the Lakers VP and the loss to the Pistons, where they have a defensive center, Ben Wallace. So either you have a transcendent superstar at center, or you have a 6'9" anchor in Ben Wallace. So after that pause, Shaq goes to the Miami Heat, and this is where we would talk about, Bradley Beal, right? You get that star center, and you get that secondary wingman. It's Tobias, the secondary wingman on this team. We have to see if that translates in the playoffs. He had a miserable playoffs. I know that Tobias is probably thinking to himself, redemption, and I want that redemption for Tobias. If he comes in and beats that second wing in the playoffs, excellent. But Shaq goes with Wade, and they win a couple of titles. And then after that, he went on to Cleveland. They were a 65-win team. And then LeBron does his, decision thing. And even those Heat teams, they had Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh was involved in that offense. Involved meaning I can stand here in that mid-high post area. I don't need the ball. LeBron James can use the ball. Dwayne Wade can use the ball. And that trio attack, high post, two slashers, absolutely deadly. That's another way you can win a championship. And the Heat won a couple of championships. And then after the Heat, you had the Golden State anomaly. But we're back to normal now, okay? Golden State was a fluke. Actually, no. Fluke is disrespectful. I'm sorry, Steve Kerr. It was a mold breaker of the game. It broke a damn near. I didn't even mention Tim Duncan's Spurs, did I? Because Tim Duncan's Spurs, 2007, 2014, etc. So you see, in the 25-year history, 20 of which that I watched this game. So I speak on the same authority of history, but also acknowledging the present. So I'm like, Brett, I'm not living in some rosy eyes. I'm living with the full perspective. But with that full perspective, Stephen A., bigs win championships. They win MVPs. They are the most prized possession in the game. And even just going back to last year in the bubble, two teams, Anthony Davis, Bam Adebayo. Bigs are more valuable than wings because an elite wing can score, but it can also be stopped. Even if Joel Embiid wasn't hitting shots in the field, and he was, and that's the incredible thing. So now instead of 20-22, he's putting up 38-39 because he's hitting shots and getting to the free throw line. When you have that unique combination, you immediately become a title contender. Like, in the end, the Colangelos were wrong on the tape. Had they traded Joel and Joel doing this on some other team, it would have been a mistake of a lifetime. You never, ever trade 7-footers. Ever. At this level of skill. So thank God that Colangelo's wife, etc., they weren't able to pull the trigger. And that we still have our crown jewel in the middle. And maybe I'm a little bit too harsh on saying with the other excuses of hitting with Nerlens and hitting with Jaleel, because in the end, you were looking to get this guy, Joel Embiid, and drafting a prospect at the most important position in basketball, hoping to get that transcendent talent and finally nailing it in. Can I be somewhat forgiving that you're so laser focused on one position? I'm gonna kind of have to, I guess, because you did end up, even though you were flirting with Dante Exum more than you should have ever even considered the possibility, but in the end, you made the call to draft Joel Embiid, and that is going to be the decision that leads the Sixers to an NBA championship. And by the way, that was the 2014 draft. That was year two, Stephen A. Year two of quote unquote the process. Someone say, "Ooh, it's intentional." Is it intentional? What some other teams are doing? Why would you have a veteran on a terrible contract when you could just, say, "Okay, we're not in it this year. We don't have the talent," and then you go draft the talent? It was overblown. It was overblown. And it was always overblown. I think the New York Knicks hadn't been in perpetuity for the last 18 years. By the way, happy on 500. The process worked. The process did its job. And the process is ultimately good for the NBA. Because if this team builds around Joel Embiid, the Sixers are going to be in the conversation for the next 5, 6, 7 years. That's 5, 7 years of NBA rating. And the process of quote unquote many, many years was 2013 to arguably 2017. So a span of 4 years. The other picks were acquired, by the way, through trade. So it wasn't as far as our perpetuity is concerned, Stephen A. Again, the Kings for 20 years. What is it, 21? And teams like, I don't know, the Clippers had far worse stretches. We all praise Pat Riley and the Heat, right? There was a time in the mid-90s where the Heat were the joke of basketball. Our turnaround through our process, unconventionally choosing younger players instead of signing veterans to terrible-ass contracts, in the end, we built a title contender. In the end, the cycle of rosters is you build a core lasts for 3 to 5 years, and then guess what? You have to do it all over again. You heard me, right? The Sixers got to be built at some point. That point is far away from today, but that's the reality of rosters. Look at the Warriors. James Wiseman ended up being a one overall pick, and they're competing somewhat. But if you're looking at the long term, would I trade a Klay Thompson or Steph Curry to get myself a pick in this year's draft? I would heavily consider it if I were the Warriors. Because in the end, you want to keep that rotation going for as long as possible. That's what in the NFL Andy Reid did for a whole number of years. So this is how you could tell how super excited I am that I just went on another 5, 6 minutes of defending the process that got Joel Embiid and defending the nature of roster building in the NBA. The point is, I am super excited about this win, so I'm just going to cap it off right here, right there. The Sixer universe, the galaxy, exploded with a huge win tonight. Let's go, Sixers. Yeah, let's go.